The 2023 NFL Draft is just a few weeks away, and on this episode of the Fired Up NFL Draft podcast, we're going to look at potential trades in the first round.
You're listening to the Fired Up Podcast Network. Let's get fired up.
And I'm your host, Brian Lamb, joined as always by Sean Balzer on the Fired Up NFL Draft podcast. What's up, Sean?
What's up, Brian? Excited to talk trades. Trade season's always a fun season, so excited to see what ends up happening. Just over 2 weeks away from the draft. A lot of potential trade possibilities here, especially the obvious one we're going to start with here in a minute.
Yeah, there's been a lot of discussion on trades. A lot of teams considering moving up, some moving down, all across the first round. So I thought it'd be a great opportunity to just look at some of these and the compensation that it may take to move up or down, and what players are going to be targeted for that.
Yep, sounds good. Ready to get into it?
Let's do it.
So you want to talk? Are we pretending like pick 2 is not a conversation, and we go straight to pick 3, or do we want to talk about that at all?
I think the general consensus is that it's going to be 2 quarterbacks.
I would just like to put it out there. There's some rumors that Caserio has some concerns with C.J. Stroud's agent, same agent as Deshaun Watson. So there's some conversation. This is rumor. It's rumor season, right? So if the Panthers do end up selecting Bryce Young, would the Texans actually pass up on C.J. Stroud? I don't think they should, and I'm not sure if that's just a rumor, or if potentially they would go with Anthony Richardson. But I don't think it's crazy that. I do think it's crazy. They shouldn't do that, but I don't think the idea of them actually doing it is crazy.
Yeah, I don't want to get too deep into that one, but assuming for your scenario that Bryce Young goes 1, I think Houston's looking between C.J. Stroud and Anthony Richardson.
I think
I know there's been other mocks where they've gone defense with that second pick, or addressing another need. I just don't think that they do it. I think it's a quarterback here, and
I think you're right. It needs to be Stroud, and my preference would be for them to pair him with Jackson Smith and Jigba at 12. But just wanted to float that rumor out there before we get to 3.
Yep. So then looking at Arizona, it's been that pick that has kind of fueled all the discussion about trade rumors and that quarterback position. I think it's likely that they move out of that pick. Do you want to talk about some of the teams that could move up there?
Yeah, so agree that it's likely they move out of that pick. I think I tweeted this. It would be malpractice if they didn't, assuming somebody gave them, a fair trade offer. The logical conclusion there is somebody's trading up for a quarterback. If it goes as expected, currently we're talking, Bryce Young 1, C.J. Stroud 2, then likely that third pick we're thinking Anthony Richardson. So if somebody's moving up for a quarterback, I think it's either the Colts. Well, I think there's a lot of teams that could be, right. The one that's kind of been popular here lately is the Titans moving from 11 to 3.
Mm-hmm.
The idea that the Colts could flip up from 4 to 3 if they covet Richardson more highly than Levis. I think that's possible. Rumors are that they like Levis. We'll see. But I don't think it's crazy that any of the top 8 could do it, and then we could talk more about even farther down the board. Colts could trade up from 4. I think Seattle could trade up from 5. I like the idea of the Lions doing it at 6. I really like the idea of the Lions doing it at 6. That offense really was really special last year. I don't think you can go into a season with Jared Goff and expect to win playoff games. And I think that offense has a chance to be really special if they're able to hit on a quarterback. I believe they can get out of Jared Goff's contract here pretty soon, probably this year, but I don't think they'll do that yet. So I really like the idea of them trading up from 6 to 3 for Anthony Richardson, have him probably sit behind Goff for some of the season, and then see what he can do. Who is it? Brad Holmes. This is his third draft for the Lions. His first move as GM, he came over from the Rams, and then his first move as GM was to acquire Jared Goff and 2 first-round picks for Matthew Stafford. Obviously, that worked out well enough for the Rams. They got their Super Bowl, but the Lions have been able to really load up here. So I like that idea. The Lions are too good to pick at 6 next year. They got this pick in that trade, obviously. So they're too good to pick this high again next year. I don't know if you trade 6 and 18 to get up to 3. That's a lot to pay. But I think that they should.
Yeah, I think it's a lot to do it. You can get out of Jared Goff's contract. You're really not losing much. You're just taking on a lot of dead cap. So you can do it. I don't know if I'm Detroit, if I'm necessarily doing it, just because, I mean, you're losing 2 of the top quarterbacks in this class. So you're probably targeting, at this point, either Anthony Richardson or Will Levis. Which one do you like in that situation? And is that somebody that you're willing to trade up for? If they're in the quarterback market, I'm looking at that 18th pick and maybe targeting somebody like Hendon Hooker to sit behind Jared Goff for a year, since he's got the knee injury. So he's probably taking a year anyway. Be able to sit behind Goff, learn that offense a little bit, kind of learn from Goff as well, with the intention of being able to start in 24.
Yeah, I don't think that's a bad idea. I'm trying to hit home runs, right? I want to win the Super Bowl. So for me, Anthony Richardson is the highest ceiling prospect here. I mean, I love Bryce Young. He is QB1 to me. Size concerns, I think, are somewhat valid, more from a potential injury standpoint than a talent perspective. He's easy one for me. But as far as having all of the tools and potentially being able to put all that together, if Anthony Richardson hits his ceiling and the Detroit Lions take him, they're going to win a Super Bowl. And that's the whole point, man.
Sure. I mean, that's if he hits his ceiling.
Sure. And that's a big if. But
I mean, for Detroit, there's still some holes in there. They need to find some explosiveness on offense, more than just a quarterback position. Whether that's finding a speedy wide receiver, somebody flashy that can get open and give Goff or whoever that quarterback is some options there and open up that offense. I think that's a better move than maybe reaching for the 3rd or 4th best quarterback in this class.
We'll see how Jameson Williams looks coming off the ACL, but I think that wide receiver core. I mean, I think Amon-Ra St. Brown is already one of the best young wide receivers in the NFL, and then if Jameson Williams is able to come back fully healthy, he looked pretty good down the stretch there. Looked like he didn't play a whole lot of snaps, but he looked like he belonged in the NFL, and he is that speed receiver. So if I'm them, I'm not addressing wide receiver in the first round. I think you could take some depth and round out that core, but Anthony Richardson hits, man, that offense is nasty.
Yeah, I just don't know if I'm a team like that, if I'm going for the 3rd or 4th best quarterback. Looking at some of the other teams up here, you have the Raiders, you have the Falcons, and the Titans. Obviously, you still have Lamar Jackson out there as well, who's requested a trade.
Sure.
Maybe even Indianapolis tries to make that work. But I think that we'll see one of these teams, maybe it's one of those 4, trade for Lamar Jackson.
There you go. I'm on the other side.
These teams is going to be one of them that's moving up for a quarterback.
I'm on the other side there. I think with the OBJ signing, it kind of somewhat came out of left field, right? They gave him near 15 million guaranteed with a chance to make up to 18, seemingly bidding against themselves. I don't think anybody was willing to give him that kind of money. And instantly there's screenshots of Lamar and OBJ hanging out on FaceTime, and then I think even at a club. So to me, I think that is OBJ knowing that Lamar is going to be back. It's just a matter of figuring it out. But the Lamar situation's weird, man. It's been weird since day one. If I'm one of these teams that needs a quarterback, the idea of trading 2 1s for him and giving him, fair market value, I'd be all over that. So the whole Lamar saga has been strange, but especially after the OBJ stuff, I'm under the impression that he does end up staying in Baltimore.
Yeah. All right, moving on. Let's talk about a player that maybe starts to slide, and if there's a team that maybe moves up for him. I think obviously looking at the big board, that player that stands out is Jalen Carter, who's had some questionable off-field concerns this offseason. So maybe he's somebody that starts to slide, right?
Yeah.
And then, you have Will Levis there, not to go too deep back into the quarterback conversation, but maybe he's somebody that starts to slide, especially if Arizona makes that pick. And so your third quarterback comes off at the fourth pick. Maybe he's somebody that starts to move down. You also have, some cornerbacks, some offensive tackles, some of these guys, that could also slide down, right, Sean?
Yeah. I mean, so Carter and Levis, I think, are the obvious potential sliders. Jalen Carter seemed to, I think it was Daniel Jeremiah mentioned something about how he thinks that Philly had guaranteed Carter he wouldn't slide past 10. It's so hard for us as, analysts and mock drafters to know what exactly these teams think in regard to, so-called character concerns, and try not to get too wrapped up in the legalities of it. But it doesn't seem like Jalen Carter is going to fall too far. Maybe 10 is that floor. Levis is a lot harder to read, right? I mean, he could go as high as maybe 3. I don't think so, but he could go as high as 3 or 4. 4 seems like a pretty decent spot for him with the Colts, especially if somebody trades up to 3 to take Richardson. But if Levis does fall, and maybe, I think Seattle and Detroit are in play for Richardson because, I see Richardson as somebody that can potentially hit the highest of ceilings, right? But I don't see them as somebody in play for Levis. Now, maybe they feel the same way or the other way that if he were to hit the ceiling, that he would be worth it as well. So maybe Seattle, maybe Detroit could do it. Maybe the Raiders, maybe the Falcons. I do think all those teams should consider it. But after that, I mean, we really start talking about him falling, potentially a ways. If the Titans have moved up, we're talking 13, 14, 15, 16's Washington, I think, would be the first place after that where he could stop the slide. 19 to Tampa, then at what point do you move up? How much do you like Will Levis to be able to move up, and how much are you willing to trade to get him?
Right. I mean, we've gone pretty in depth on what type of player he is on the field. Love his arm. Obviously there's some flashes. A lot of highs and lows that you kind of wish would even out a little bit. Maybe the highs get a little higher, and the lows, kind of get a little higher too. Yeah, I don't know if he really, falls that far, to be honest with you. Washington at 16, I feel kind of, just kind of feel like that's maybe the farthest that he'd slide. If my opinion is, if he does start to slide, that's probably the player that you'll see a team move up to draft. Just looking at where he could fall to and what you're getting out of that player. There's a lot of traits that NFL scouts and coaches and GMs like. And I think that's something that you could move up and get.
I wonder if a team like the Vikings, I'll throw them out as a possibility. There's been some chatter on them potentially liking Hendon Hooker. Maybe, if they like Levis more, could be a potential. Could be similar to, not that Will Levis is Patrick Mahomes, but it could be similar to the Bills Chiefs trade, which was they went from 27 to 10 for I think I want to say it was just a future one and a 3. Actually, I've got that right here. There's a future 1 and a 3. So if they can go from 23 to 10ish, I mean, Eagles are at 10. Howie Roseman is always wheeling and dealing his first round picks. I believe he's made a trade regarding his first round pick in 4 of the last 5 years. They went into the draft last year with 3 picks. I want to say 15, 16, and 19 last year, and they didn't use a single one of them. Traded 2 of them, 2 to the Saints, and 1 for AJ Brown, and 1 to move up to get Jordan Davis. So that's a team that's always looking to trade, and that could be a spot for the Vikings or a team maybe like Tampa to move up to for somebody like Will Levis.
Yeah, I mean, again, it all goes back to that Cardinals pick. If that's not a quarterback, I think it kind of just blows up the whole, I guess mock draft is what you'd call it. If you have, Will Anderson come off the board there, or whoever you have, a defensive player come off the board there, then suddenly that puts Seattle in play as, maybe a potential spot to move to. Obviously that pick came from trading Russell Wilson to Denver.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not a pick that, maybe they're tied to. Moving back to 16, 19, 23, the Vikings, Kirk Cousins is in the last year of his contract this year. So that they do need a quarterback. So maybe that's a potential spot for them. But moving from 23 to 5, or 23 to 10, anywhere in that range is going to take a lot.
Yeah, I think you're looking at.
So it's a long-term commitment to do so. I think it'll be an interesting move if they choose to make it.
Yeah, I think if the Vikings or Bucks move from that 19 to 23 area to that 10ish area, you're talking about a future 1 and probably 1+, whether it be 2 or 3 or 4, depending on the location. But that's a possibility for a team that does like Will Levis, and he drops past the top 8. Those Seattle, Detroit, Las Vegas, Atlanta. If he does get past them, then it's who's going to move up.
Yeah. Moving on, we have targeting a mid first round prospect. Just looking at the board, Sean, we have a couple edge rushers in Lucas Van Ness, Miles Murphy, Nolan Smith. A couple offensive tackles in Broderick Jones and Darnell Wright. Maybe a couple cornerbacks, Deontay Banks. You still have this wide receiver class. Really hard to kind of tell where they're going to come off the board.
Yeah.
Quentin Johnston, Jordan Addison, Zay Flowers. I don't know if Jalen Hyatt's necessarily up there. Dalton Kincaid, Michael Mayer, or somebody like Kalijah Cansey.
So many possibilities. I think O-line and D-line, when I think people potentially moving up for a non-quarterback. Corner is a possibility, and wide receiver. It's really about like teardrops, right? If we've got like top 4 tackles. So if you're a tackle needy team and the fourth one is sitting there, and you're going to need to move up to make sure you secure him. I mean, there's so many offensive line needy teams. I mean, we can go down the board. It's most all of them need offensive line help. The corners, I mean, seems like the top 3 have kind of separated themselves, with Deontay Banks not being too far behind. So, once the top 3 go, you trade up for Banks, maybe you trade up for Porter or Witherspoon or Gonzalez, depending on how those go. I think those could be really, those 3 could go in any order. It seems like Witherspoon's probably the heavy favorite at the moment. So O-line and D-line, I guess, we get to edge rushers. Again, it's with the teardrops for me, right? So obviously Will Anderson's going to go really high. And then you've got Tyree Wilson should go 5 to, 8. What's the worst case scenario? 8. And then you've got Van Ness and Nolan Smith. So, I mean, like I said, it's going to be all about how the board falls, right? So if the 3rd or 4th guy goes off the board, and that's a position you're really wanting to target, it's about coming up. And again with O-line, same with D-line, as I said with O-line, so many of these teams need edge rushing help. I mean, I don't know if you have any specific spots in mind, but we could be talking about any of these teams at the bottom of the draft. And then wide receiver, I don't know what to say about the wide receivers in this draft, right? So, I mean, Jackson Smith and Jigba is clearly a first round pick. I think McShay kind of questioned that early on, but I think we've figured out by now he's going in the first round, right? Kuiper just put out a mock draft with Quentin Johnston in the 2nd round. That's shocking to me. I think that's crazy. I seriously doubt that happens. But there's, every single wide receiver prospect has his haters and his biggest fans and his biggest haters this year. It seems more polarizing than in years past. Obviously there's no Jamar Chase type prospect, but that doesn't mean that these aren't really good prospects. I really like Jordan Addison. There's just no way, to me, the top 3 aren't first round picks. And I'd include Zay Flowers in the top 4 as a first round pick. I think Jalen Hyatt, he could be, he's not somebody that's going to be traded up for as a mid-round prospect, right? But while we're talking wide receivers, I do think that, he's a potential one as well. I guess, I don't know, any particular teams that you see from the bottom half trading up for any one of those guys?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on the position that we're going to talk about, right?
Right. We've covered half of
Seattle, if you want to look at cornerback, do they do that with the 5th pick, or do they wait till 20, or do they move out of maybe 5 and move down and get some more picks, and maybe in the mid-teens or somewhere in there, maybe early teens, to make a pick. Then looking at some of these teams that were ones that made the playoffs but really didn't get far. Jacksonville is the one that comes to mind, kind of on the cusp of becoming a really good team. But you also have Houston going after a quarterback. You have Indianapolis going after a quarterback. Tennessee going after a quarterback. So for me, when I see that, I see a team that maybe should look towards the secondary, just to kind of beef up that group. Dallas is a team that always likes to make that splash. So what do they do in that situation? And another one that I'm looking at is Pittsburgh. Probably need some help on the offensive line. Maybe it's the secondary. Do they stay at 17 and hope a player falls to them? Do they move up? For me, if I'm that GM, I'm looking very seriously at moving up and kind of getting ahead of that curve.
Agree completely. It's Steelers moving up for O line, Cowboys, maybe Giants moving up for wide receiver. I could definitely see those.
Yeah. Speaking of cornerback, next topic is trading up for cornerback. We have a lot of these guys. There's also some that are just outside of the first round and on the big board. Guys like Keely Ringo, Cam Smith, Emmanuel Forbes. Do you think that maybe there's a team that would move up into that 25 to 31 range to try and get one of those guys?
Yeah. I mean, man, we've got so many good corners there. There's 7 that we think are first or mid to high second round picks. So, it's going to depend on how, these teams evaluate them, obviously. But a team like Seattle, if let's say they don't address the position early on, moving back up, they have 2 second round picks, I believe, 37 and 52. I could see them going from 37 to, the late 20s, early 30s. Again, you got Philly there again as a team that loves to trade, so that would be a possibility. I'm just now realizing we got 7 good cornerbacks that can go in the top 40 or 50. We'll see, how these teams feel about all 7. Certainly, one of them could slide, but I could see the Steelers also trading up for a corner, especially Joey Porter Jr. Obviously, that's a guy the franchise, the fan base would applaud that draft pick. But O-line as well there for them. So a lot of different possibilities.
Yeah, I mean, you have some teams, kind of in the 20s that are looking at cornerbacks. Baltimore, Minnesota, the Giants. What do they do in that spot? Another team that I really just can't put a finger on what they're looking at is 29 with the New Orleans Saints. Just grabbed Derek Carr in free agency. I don't think that they're going to go with a quarterback. I know there was some discussion about Hendon Hooker there. I just don't think that's a good move for them. As a quarterback with a thin skin, I think the last thing that I'd do is once you just signed him is sign a backup in the first round.
Derek Carr, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wouldn't blame the Saints for taking a shot on quarterback. That team's future is in trouble. This is a franchise that continues to try to compete, and I give them credit for trying, right? But they haven't been able to, climb the summit in since Drew Brees was around, obviously. So at some point, things are going to explode for this team. They've been in a terrible cap position. Is now a good time to take a swing on a quarterback? I wouldn't blame them for it. I think that Hendon Hooker is absolutely worth, what is that pick? Where they at 29? Is that right? Hendon Hooker is a first round pick to me. There's been a lot of Tennessee offense slander on Twitter lately, and I'd just like to stick up for Jalen Hyatt and Hendon Hooker a little bit. I mean, is some of the playbook a little bit gimmicky? Maybe. Do you boat race Alabama and score 5 touchdowns against them on gimmicks? No, you don't. So Hendon Hooker absolutely worth trading back into the first round if you were to. I mean, that's a slide to me because I like Hendon Hooker. So if he's available there late in the 20s, 30s. Again, I think Seattle is another for the same reason for corner. I think Seattle could do the same kind of thing, trade up with Philly or in that area to go, with their early 2 to 30-ish for Hooker if he's still around. And then any of these higher teams that missed out, right? So somebody from from Seattle, Detroit, Vegas, Atlanta, one of those teams is going to miss out on a quarterback, right? Or probably two or three of those teams are going to miss out a quarterback in the first round. So,
in the market.
or before the end of the first round. So coming back up and getting Hooker near the end of the first round, I think is possible for any of those teams.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm somebody like Vegas, Tennessee, obviously we don't know what's going to happen with Aaron Rodgers and the Jets. But Washington, Tampa Bay, maybe even Baltimore, if one of those teams misses out on somebody that they're really looking at and targeting on that board, I love the idea of moving down from that first round pick into a spot where you might be able to take somebody like Hendon Hooker. I think that's a really good move for them. Not only do you get to add some draft capital in the future, but also getting a quarterback that, probably not going to start in 23, but it is a dynamic player and somebody that you'd be able to build an offense around in 24 and beyond.
He tore the ACL in November, so I mean, I'd take the over on 0.5 NFL starts in 23. But listen, I'm a Hendon Hooker fan, so if he somehow falls out of the first round, I'll personally be offended. One of these teams should absolutely jump up if he falls, in my opinion, to late 20s, early 30s, and not only secure who I had as QB3 before the injury, but get that fifth year option.
Yeah, I mean, there's not just concerns about that offense. There's some about his age too.
Sure.
I was having that discussion a couple of days ago on Twitter. He wasn't going to be anything at Virginia Tech, certainly not what he is now. I don't blame him for moving into the transfer portal and heading to Tennessee. And he's made the most of every opportunity he's had with the Volunteers. So, don't fault him for that. And I'm not going to hold his age against him. Cause he's going to be 31, I think is what it is, or 31 at the end of his rookie contract.
31. Yeah.
So, after that, maybe you have another 7-8 years, but that's still 7-8 years with a quarterback that you're going to love. So I'm not going to fault him for that.
If Brandon Whedon is a first round draft pick, Hendon Hooker is a first round draft pick.
Sure. Any other players maybe outside of this top 32 that you could see slide in? Maybe somebody like Will McDonald or maybe DeJuan Jones.
DeJuan Jones, maybe. Will McDonald, I'm not as high on as you are. I could, but offensive line and edge rushers. I mean, everybody needs them and nobody has them. So I could easily see a team jumping back up in there. I mean, with the usual suspects. Anybody in the top 10 or really farther down, if they fall in love with one of those guys and he's at the end of one of those tiers. I think so much of this trade stuff comes from how much a team likes a particular player and how much they value him more than the next player at that position, right? So if you think that Will McDonald belongs in the same tier or near the same conversation as the other guys we talked about, Van Ness and Nolan Smith, then absolutely somebody could jump up if he's still there, late in the first.
Yep. And I mean, man, just looking at some of these teams, just kind of, if you're not sold on somebody getting out of that first round, and letting one of these teams move up and take that player, I think, is the right move. Maybe somebody like Dallas just cut Ezekiel Elliott. Are they in love with Bijan Robinson? Or are you looking at one of these other running backs, Devon Achane? Tajay Spears, Jahmyr Gibbs, one of these guys, Tank Bigsby. Those are guys that you can get in the second, third, fourth round, depending on the player. So a little bit better value there. And obviously you're gonna spell him with Tony Pollard anyway. So it's not like you need somebody that can handle a full workload. So maybe moving out of that pick and letting somebody move up is the right move.
Yeah, I think Jahmyr Gibbs would be the most likely answer to that question. Is if there's a team that is willing to take him, early second, do they want to go ahead and jump up to late first round to get that fifth year option for a running back? Again, we have this running back conversation every time we talk about first round NFL draft pick running backs, but a lot of teams would value that fifth round option, on a position that doesn't have a very long shelf life.
Yeah. All right. I think that's going to do it, Sean. Tell everybody where they can find you.
On Twitter at Sean_Balzer.
And I am on Twitter at BrianLamb_ISN. We're both contributors for NFLDraftLounge.com. And this is the Fired Up NFL Draft Podcast. And we'll see you next time. Take care.